All right, the topic of this video just provides a little bit of an overview of the Bill of Rights, something we're going to be talking about in a lot more detail over the course of the next couple days. All right, so these are the amendments that make up the Bill of Rights. We've talked about this at other points during the course of the year. Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments that are added to the Constitution, and they protect a lot of the basic things that you enjoy in terms of rights as American citizens. So again, like these are things that you're pretty familiar with already, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail with. First things first, it's important to know that the Bill of Rights protect your civil liberties. So what exactly are civil liberties? Because they're a little bit different than civil rights that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Civil liberties are the rights that are spelled out in the Constitution that protect you from an abusive government. So you think back to those amendments that I just showed you. The Bill of Rights protect your civil liberties. Think about the things that are in those amendments that are meant to protect you from a government taking away your rights, such as the right to freedom of speech and religion, right to own a gun, your basic trial rights, your right not to be exposed to cruel and unusual punishment. All of those things are civil liberties. So the Bill of Rights protects your basic civil liberties that you enjoy as American citizens. And one of the things we're just going to briefly talk about is the fact that who has to follow the Bill of Rights and the guidelines spelled out within them. The interpretation of that has changed throughout our country's history. So from about 1789, the very beginning of our country's history, through like the end of the Civil War in like 1868, right, a little bit beyond the end of the Civil War, the belief was that only the national government had to follow those guidelines spelled out in the first 10 amendments. That the state governments didn't have to necessarily provide those rights. And it was just that the intention of the Bill of Rights was to protect you from the national government. The states are kind of playing by different rules. If you just look at the way the First Amendment is written, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, right? It doesn't say anything about the state governments. So for the first early portion of our country's history, state governments did not have to follow the same sort of guidelines spelled out in the Bill of Rights the national government did. That changes in 1868 with the passing of the 14th Amendment. So the 14th Amendment due process clause. So the 14th Amendment is important for a couple different reasons. But like one of the reasons is that it basically gave African Americans that were formerly enslaved citizenship. But one of the other things it does is it says, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. This is known as the due process clause. And because like state is actually mentioned, the way the Supreme Court has interpreted this is that the 14th Amendment requires the state governments now to also protect all of those sort of rights that you have within the Bill of Rights. So from the beginning of our country's history to 1868, it was just the national government that had to follow those rules. And then because of the wording of the 14th Amendment, all the state governments have to sort of like provide those protections too. And the process of forcing the states to also give these protections is a process known as incorporation, right? That's like making the state governments, in addition to the national government, follow all of those protections within the Bill of Rights.